Welcome to Modern Musings, conversations with the maiden, mother, and crone, looking at ourselves and the world through the lens of the 21st century. Hi, and welcome back. I'm your hostess, Cindy Murray, and I am here today with my co-hosts, Amber Jones and Kristen Hessler.
Hey.
Hello.
And if you have been here before and listened to us, we're glad you came back. And if you're a new listener, welcome. We are three women who have different points of view, and we have discussions on a variety of topics. And we hope you'll sit back and enjoy the conversation today. We are having a discussion today about a movie that I just watched last night, which is Heart Huckabees. And Kristen and Amber have been on me for a long time because I had never watched this movie.
Like 20 years.
Yeah, like for 20 years. They've been after me about watching this movie. So, is it actually 20 years old? Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Oh, yeah. 2004. Okay. Well, anyway, I had not watched it, and so they were after me, so we decided to do a podcast about it, and so they made me watch it. And I will say that was a great movie. I enjoyed it thoroughly. I laughed through a lot of it, but I also could relate to a lot of it.
Mm-hmm.
Even the first scene. And if I have any spoilers here, there may be spoilers. I think it's old enough that if there's spoilers, go watch it first and then listen to the podcast. But
I recommend that you go watch it. Like, just
watch it
pause and
anyway.
go watch it.
Yeah.
You can get it on just about. We watched on Apple TV. You can probably get it on Amazon Prime.
It was a
or
cheap
something.
rent. Yeah. So anyway, it even the first scene, as I was fixing to say, I could relate to because he's walking along in this little meadow or a marsh. I think he's in a marsh, and he's just cussing in his head. He's going over in his head all these things. He's mad at somebody, it's obvious, and he's just cussing and cussing and cussing and talking about, I should just quit. No, you can't quit. I should just quit. No, you can't quit. And I can relate to that conversation in my head many times. But the main character, Albert, is having an existential crisis of sorts. He sees a coincidence, and that happens 3 times, and he's curious if it has meaning. And so he goes to these existential detectives to help him figure it out. And the movie is kind of about him and his rival, and they're both kind of having these crises and trying to get down to the root of what their problem is. And it's very interesting to me because it talks. I see a lot of things in it, like mirroring and triggers that we talk about often in the podcast, and in healing and mental well-being, topics and things. And so it was very interesting to me to watch it from that point of view and understanding what he's actually going through and why he's going through these things, and recognizing personality types that I recognize in the different characters of the movie. And so I got a lot out of it, more so in reaffirmations of the things that I believe, and how things kind of affect you that you don't that I don't believe in coincidences, I guess, is the point. And there's actually differing viewpoints in the movie where the existential detectives try to tell him that the coincidences may be nothing, but they actually have a rival themselves who believes that nothing is they believe that everything is connected. So they're kind of transcendentalist in some ways, but they're also their rival, she believes that nothing is connected, everything is independent. And so I'm interested what you guys think, because I kind of tend to be of the mind that everything is connected in some way. You know, I believe in the 6 degrees of separation. I think that even though as humans we're all kind of unique and we have free will and things, there are things that connect us to everything else. And so we're all connected in some way. And the things that we do have rippling effects on the rest of the world. You know, it's kind of almost like the butterfly effect. You can't always know what the effects of what you do are going to be, but you can guarantee that there will be some kind of ripple effect. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I tend to believe that also, that everything is connected in some way, and everything is predetermined in some way. And like when I talk about tarot cards and stuff like that, it's like you're on like a path and you follow a path. Now you can deviate from this path, and then your path changes. So like everything is predetermined, but you can make decisions that change the determination.
Okay.
So you both believe in existentialism versus nihilism.
Yes. I do not believe in nihilism.
I don't either. I don't think I could live
In
with
a nothing world with
nihilism,
nothing, and
where nothing is
right.
doomsday-ishness.
Yeah.
So for those of you who are not familiar with the philosophy, these are different philosophies. Nihilism, which can also be pronounced nihilism, which is how they pronounced it in the movie, and I was like, what? I always thought it was nihilism. It is actually pronounced both ways. Is the rejection of all religious and moral principles in the belief that life is meaningless. And I just absolutely do not believe
It's
that.
not even doomsday, it's just meaningless.
Meaningless,
because
yes,
doomsday
pointless.
would have a meaning even
Right.
too. Just
and
a negative
so
meaning.
I don't I can't buy into that. I think there is meaning to life. We may not know exactly what that meaning is, but I believe there is. And I don't know, there's a lot of different theories. I'm not sure I believe any of the other stuff either. I mean, I'm not entirely a transcendentalist either, because I don't think that people are naturally good. And, you know, the transcendentalists believe that people and nature are inherently good. And so they don't believe in heaven. Now, I don't know if I believe in heaven the way some people believe in heaven. I believe in it probably a little differently, but, so I don't think I'm really a transcendentalist either. So
Are you talking about existentialist or transcendentalist?
transcendentalist. I'm just kind of going through some different things, because in the wiki description of the existential detectives, they are a combination of romantic and transcendentalist.
Which, because she talks about how the husband's, or I'm assuming it's his husband, her partner.
Yes. So anyway, there's lots of philosophies in here, and like I said, there's the nihilism, there's transcendentalism, there's a mention of, I mean, they don't name them by name in the movie, but
Except for nihilism.
Well, except for the nihilism, but their principles are discussed in different ways. Romanticism, and then there's also existentialism. They did talk about they were existential detectives, And so it's existentialism is a philosophical theory that they ask what is the meaning, or that's their search is for the meaning in life.
It's like the ultimate truth of oneself.
Right. Yes. That's a better. I'm having a hard word day today. So, but yeah. So that like when people go through an existential crisis, they're often having anxiety or whatever and dread because the world seems like crazy, and they want to know the reason why it's so weird or so absurd. And so that's what existentialism is, kind of exploring those questions of meaning and why we are here. And so anyway, there's all these different theories that they're talking about. And I don't know, it was just very interesting because they talked about some of their theories in the movie about how they could take things apart. I was particularly interested in the scenes where, they used sensory deprivation to get to where you could face certain traumas and things like that. But they did this really interesting visual effect where the one of the detectives, played by Dustin Hoffman, is talking to the main character Albert and talking about how really in reality we are so close to each other that we really don't have the
they're
space,
talking about the cracks.
the
You
cracks
can't
and the space
see
between
the
us,
space.
because
Between the cracks.
right. And so what is the end of me and the beginning of you? There really is no end of me and beginning of you. They're like the molecules or whatever are so closely touching or whatever. We're so interconnected that there really is no end of me, beginning of you. They're just kind of
Right.
there's space within the
People
space.
think of where there's air, there's nothing, and they
But
think
there's
of
not
this
nothing.
person's body and this person's body,
Yes.
and there's this space in between. But technically, your bodies are both touching the air,
Right.
and therefore it's just the molecules of air in between you. So
Right.
everything is touching.
Everything is touching. Yeah.
We
Everything
are
is
all
connected.
literally connected. So I am touching something that's touching something that's touching something that's touching someone in China. If you think about it that way.
And just like I was talking about, like
It's kind of like we're all related.
the 6 degrees of separation.
Yeah.
You know, I'm connected to someone who's connected to someone who's connected to someone who's connected to someone in China, or the butterfly effect. Someone in China can step on a butterfly and it makes shockwaves, ripple effect across the world. And, you know, all of these things, you know, they're kind of addressed in that movie in some form or fashion or another. And it was a really interesting movie because I was watching it after having read Eckhart Tolle and other things. And we had this discussion between you guys, how you watched it when you were in college, right? High school or college?
I was basically like 21 years
and how
old
it
or
struck you
22
differently now after you've read Eckhart Tolle and how it struck you back then.
Right. The movie made sense to me then. And I identified with the characters, and I liked the story, and I was very into philosophy just as much then as I am now. And so I've always liked the movie, and it's very unique. I don't think of any other movie that approaches philosophy in a story format, or any format. Right. And so that to me was very striking. It's very different. And then on top of that, you know, the characters, how they are developed, they're all very unique, but they're all very similar. They're going through a process, and they come to understand each other in this movie. And I watched it probably 100 times. And then I didn't watch it for many years, and then we finally get a chance to watch it again after reading Eckhart Tolle, and I was like, wow, I even understand this movie on a different level.
Right.
And can appreciate it even more after reading Eckhart Tolle, because now I understand what it's like to be in your ego, or to hate someone because they're so similar to you, or feel threatened by somebody, because that was one of the things like that Albert was going through was, the things that he loved and held dearly, he was threatened by the other character,
his nemesis or whatever.
And
but they were the same,
and they were very similar, and they were both going through this same like process in their life where they were losing something that they loved and that was really important to them, and they were really trying hard to keep on to it. And it didn't take Albert understanding that the other guy was going through the same thing until he literally saw his grief mirrored in him. And I feel like I probably didn't capture that as much because all I saw was Albert got revenge at the end.
Yeah.
But now I saw that through his revenge,
he realized,
he understood what happened, and he felt bad.
Yeah, he did
about what happened. Yeah.
But yeah, I did see, and it's like I was talking about earlier, kind of mentioned briefly about mirroring and triggering, and it's one of those theories that what triggers us is because it's reflecting back to us something that's inside us.
Right.
So if you get mad at the girl who talks too much and won't shut up and let you get a word in edgewise, maybe it's because you are that girl who also talks and doesn't, it's triggering you because you either are that person or because someone didn't let you talk, so it's kind of like it's a mirror, but sometimes it's
one way or the other.
Yeah.
Well, the blanket theory, this is one of the things that the character that Dustin Hoffman plays is helping Albert understand his experience. And before he gets in that chamber, he talks about this blanket, and he pulls out like this big sheet, and he says like, this is you and this is me, like on this other side of the blanket, like he's got his hands under the blanket, and he's like, we're all part of the blanket. And Albert's like, well, what's on the outside of the blanket? And he goes, more blanket, it's infinite, right?
Right.
And he says, this is the Eiffel Tower, and this is a hammer, and, this is this feeling and emotion and me and you. And he said, when you get the blanket thing, you can relax. Because everything you could ever want or be, you already have and are.
And we talk about that a lot.
We do, and that actually, when I listened to that, when I was watching it yesterday, I thought, oh my gosh, that's like manifesting. Like because
it's the law of attraction.
It is so close to me, I could touch it.
Yes.
I could have it.
Yes. It's the law of attraction because you have to live and believe as though you already have it.
And then knowing that, I can relax. I don't have to worry about it because it's right there.
Right.
It's at the fingertips.
Right.
Yeah, it's just it's sad that most people don't feel that way, or they act differently than they feel. And the movie also explores that, like the nemesis at one point in the movie, one of the most famous quotes probably from the movie, he says, they talk about being yourself, and he says, how am I not myself?
Yeah.
And then they start repeating what he said. They say, how am I not myself? How am I not myself?
Yeah.
How am I not myself? And he begins to doubt himself, and they show him that he's fake.
Yeah.
Like he's living this fake life, putting on a show, trying to make people like him. And
When he was successful at it, but that's a hard task to keep up.
Well, yeah, he was successful at it, but he had to and one of the things that it shows is that he tells this same story about Shania Twain over and over and over, and everybody loves hearing that story, but it's just, and he does it to the point where he doesn't even realize that
done it. Yeah.
He's saying this same story over and over, because it's a story that makes him feel good about himself, and it shows that he had some kind of power over Shania Twain in this story. But then they point out to him that you don't have anything else. Yeah. You just have this one story. So you're not being yourself. If you were being yourself, you would have more than one story.
And I think the irony is I don't think that story is even true.
Oh,
probably
no,
not.
Well, no. Did you not?
Well,
towards the end of the movie, she was like, it was tofu tuna.
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
it wasn't even
the
real story, but he told
he
it so many times that he believed
it.
He
made it into a real story.
Yeah.
And then I think that's when he realized, everything is a lie.
Yeah.
Yeah,
well, his whole life was a lie.
Who even am I?
But,
I am fake.
We all do that to some extent because we are different people when we're around different people. And,
put on a different face.
We put on a different face. We put on a show. We try to be the person that we think other people want us to be instead of being our own true, authentic self.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Or we have imposter syndrome. Yeah. And in some ways, Albert was doing the same thing. He was.
Well, he was sneaking pictures of himself so people would notice him.
Yeah.
And so he was trying to be Brad, but he was being unsuccessful at it. And so therefore, both of them were the same, but Brad was more successful at what he was trying to be.
But at the same
in
time,
different ways.
Wasn't
no,
successful.
He wasn't. In the end, he didn't
win.
win.
So the whole time, Albert is jealous of
Brad for what
fake,
he has.
like a fake show.
But it's
fake.
It
wasn't even real.
It's not real.
No, it was like a life that he built so he could get up in the
Brad
company.
felt threatened by Albert and was trying to undermine him because that was his only way to climb the corporate ladder. And so that was and even the other characters, the Mark Wahlberg character and the I can't remember her name.
Naomi Watts.
Naomi Watts' character was she was the model,
mm-hmm.
and she realized she was always pretty, but she didn't feel pretty.
Yeah,
and
she always felt like she had to be pretty.
She had to be pretty, and she had to act a certain way, and she was the voice and the talent of all their commercials, and that wasn't her true authentic self,
mm-hmm.
and even those people, were not living their true authentic selves.
Yeah, Mark Wahlberg was in a relationship with someone that
was more materialistic than he mm-hmm. was, and he's like an anti-petroleum industry thing, and he's like totally against, fast fashion and anything created by petroleum products. He didn't want to ride in a vehicle. There's a lot of bike riding.
Yeah,
there's a lot of bike riding.
Really ironic because he's a firefighter, and those are one of the big gas guzzling vehicles.
Right, but he was in the movie. He was at that point where he was breaking down, and getting to like the root of who he really was, and that's when you see people in your life starting to kind of like fall out because you butt heads.
Yeah,
people
want you to be
his
who
life
they want
wasn't
you to be.
in alignment with him anymore. So even though he still was going to work, he was not, it wasn't the job for him because he couldn't. He didn't believe in getting in the fire truck, and
well, and his he blew up
relationships,
his relationship with his wife and his
job,
child, and his job. And that happens a lot when people make major changes in their lives and start to become more true to themselves. and try to be more authentic, the people in their lives often fight against that. And you hear about like diet sabotagers, that like people start to lose weight and suddenly their family members try to sabotage them because they feel threatened by the change of the person having the diet or whatever, and so they don't want you to lose weight because you might not want them anymore, or they don't want you, they are threatened by it because they're afraid you're going to make them eat differently,
Right, their
or
way of
whatever.
life's going to be changed.
Right, and so people often fight that, and that was another kind of aspect of that movie, was that he was facing that, being true to himself, but he was actually trying to change his wife, but she wasn't having any of it. Mm-hmm. But you were talking about people drop out of your life.
Yeah,
that
when
often
they say,
does happen.
Like, I don't even know who you are anymore. That's them. That's their ego.
That's their ego not wanting to let go of who you are, and because you're trying to be your own authentic self. They want you to be who they want you to be.
Yeah. I think the moral of that story is that it's okay. People come and go in your life.
Oh, absolutely.
And you will find your soul tribe.
Yeah,
in the process.
And in the end he does. He does. He finds someone who
actually everybody had a happy ending in the end.
I think so too, yeah. Except Brad. Did he?
Well, he came to terms with Albert, and
well, that's true.
Well, yeah,
that's true.
They reconciled.
Yeah,
he came to terms with himself.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So yeah, I think a lot of this is, a lot of it is about being your own authentic self, and being who you are, and not letting other people dictate who you are. And that was actually a big lesson both Albert and Brad learned. Albert went back to his childhood when he was told he couldn't be emotional, he couldn't have feelings, and he realized that that was who he was. He had been repressing his feelings for a long time because he was told that, kind of like big boys don't cry kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so, and then Brad also was dealing with issues of love and shame from his family. And so he had to come to terms with that, being who he was. So yeah, I think it was very interesting.
So would you recommend the movie to anybody else?
I do. I would tell them to go into it with a little bit of awareness that it's not your traditional. I don't know how to explain it. It's very philosophical. It has its own entertainment value. It does.
It's a comedy, but it's a darker comedy.
Yeah.
A thinking comedy.
Yeah. I think when they describe it themselves, they call it, I'm trying to remember what they call it. An existential comedy. That's what they call it.
An existential comedy.
They call it an existential comedy. So I think you have to be aware that there's some topics there that are like, you might not agree with the theories or whatever, but I think it's definitely not for kids. There are some scenes.
Oh yeah, the first word out of the
there's language,
movie is a cuss word.
Yeah.
Well, the first
15, 20 words. Yeah.
And it is a movie that you will have to think when you watch it, like if you scroll on your phone or you're doing other things, then you'll miss a lot of things in the movie.
You can't
It's
do
one of
anything
those,
else
like,
while you're watching it. I don't think you have to it moves pretty quickly, and little things are going on, and I don't know. You have to pay attention to it.
But it's definitely worth a watch.
I think so.
It's worth it, definitely.
I think so too.
One of my favorites.
So, what was your biggest takeaway from it, Amber, from that movie? What is the biggest takeaway that you have from that?
My biggest takeaway is that we should all be our authentic selves. Like, it's only hurting you in the end
Yeah.
if you are not your authentic self, if you are wasting your life putting on a show for other people. Your life is not about you, it's about that other person that you're trying to impress.
I had when you say that, it brings me back to your wedding. And I know some people question some of your choices for the wedding, and yet I think you had one of the most beautiful weddings I have seen in a long time. It was gorgeous, and it was totally you, or it felt like to me that it was totally authentically you. And I know some of the choices that you made, some people had
Been worried that it wouldn't work.
were worried that it
or-
wouldn't work, it would clash,
or wasn't traditional.
right. And I will laugh at the one fine example of that is your life-size cutout of Edgar Allan Poe, who stood in the corner at the wedding, at the reception. So I really think, you were you gave a great example of being your authentic self, and how it, it really, and your decor in your home with you and Jason is very.
And it took me many years to be. I mean, I've always kind of been my authentic self, but it took me many years to. I want to say that this podcast has really helped me come out of my shell, because I was afraid to talk my feelings and put myself out there. And so stepping into this podcast has really brought me out of my shell. But I realize that the older I get, it's time wasted if you're not your authentic self.
I agree, absolutely.
And yeah, a lot of those choices that I made for my wedding, I was I would think, well, what are people going to think about this? But then in the end, I realized that I didn't care, because it's my wedding and it's my day and it's about me. And if anybody had anything to say about it, they could write me a letter or whatever. They could just not say anything. They could just put it in the suggestion box of how to have a better wedding. But, it was just I wasn't, and I had put myself through the ringer when I started planning it, worrying about what people were thinking and listening to too many people's opinions.
Yep.
And then
I remember that.
And then I sat back and I realized I was just nah, man, this is what I'm going to do, and I'm going to do it. I want to have, these are the colors that make me happy, so I'm going to have these colors. I want to wear untraditional wedding shoes. I want to do this and do that and color my hair purple. So my goodness, I'm going to do it.
Right. And like I said, I think it was absolutely beautiful, and it was very you. It was uniquely you. But it was one of the most. I even now look back at the pictures and I'm just that was stunning. Yeah. It was stunning, and it's not things that I would have chosen, but I can see you in them, and it was stunningly beautiful. And so I think that's, when you go with your gut instinct, your own authentic self, things turn out better than you could ever imagine they would.
And you're a lot happier.
Oh yeah.
If you do the things the way that you want to do them, you're a lot happier. And I definitely didn't do the things that way.
Yeah.
At in my first wedding, I didn't do the things the way that I wanted to do them. I did quick and easy and cheap. And this time, I may have spent a little bit more money than people are normally willing to spend on food. And I may have spent a little bit more money than people are willing to spend on cake or DJ or whatever. But in the end, I think it turned out perfectly.
Right. Well, and I had a similar experience with my home decor, that I remodeled my living room and stuff. And I had a lot of people going, First off, my husband, when the first time I painted one of my walls brown, and he was like, no, that's too dark. That's too dark. And so I listened to him, and I went and got a lighter color of paint, and we painted the wall. And I looked at it and I went, that's not what I imagined. And even at that point, he agreed that doesn't look as good as, and so we went back and bought the darker color of paint and repainted the wall. And then when I started, that was the first time I painted in there. And then when we remodeled everything, I put in the crown molding and the tall baseboards. And people were trying to tell me, oh, but people are taking the crown molding out of their houses now, and they're getting rid of the tall baseboards, and they're going to different colors of paint, and I was like, I don't care. This is what I want. And so I had them put in the crown molding, and I put in the tall baseboards, and they're white on top of the color, the brown walls, and then the white trim. And then my other walls are like what would you call that? A light ocean blue, a tropical blue, Tiffany blue, maybe. Yeah. And people, the people that were, are you sure you want to do that? Are you sure you want to do that? And then now everybody comes in and tells me how stunning it is.
Oh yeah, it's a showpiece room for sure.
And I'm like, I just went with what my authentic self wanted to see.
Mm-hmm.
And I love the way it turned out. So, yeah. Why do I have to do what everybody else wants? It's my house. I'm the one who lives in it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And it's comfortable to me.
And you want your space to be that way.
Yeah. Yeah, my husband laughed at my zebra print bar stools, but I get so many compliments on them. It's a very eclectic looking room. I don't even know how to explain it, but I get a lot of compliments because it looks really cool. So, yeah. So what about you? What was your big takeaway, Kristen?
Probably my big takeaway is that, and this probably wasn't really like talked about in the movie much, like they briefly covered it, but then they never like really circle back.
Mm-hmm.
Albert originally went to the existentialist to find out why he was having a coincidence. He wanted them to figure out why he kept bumping into this guy, and they wanted to take him through the philosophy of what existentialism was. And they went into places that he didn't want to go to because he was like, don't go to my work. It's a sticky situation there. I don't want to talk about my work. And
don't go to my home with my parents or whatever.
Yeah,
he actually lied to them about his parents.
Yeah, he did. Yeah. He didn't want to face the real issues. And he was like, his life was kind of crumbling around him because he wasn't being successful at his job, and his parents were not happy with the fact that his job wasn't successful, and he was lonely.
Yes.
And he was very lonely. Like, he even said he was lonely, but he was like obsessed with trying to find meaning out of something that didn't have meaning. And so he was really just focused on that.
Yeah.
And immediately, they were like, there's coincidences that have nothing. They're really just coincidences.
That was the point, that it was just coincidence.
Just coincidence. And that was the first thing she told him, right when he met her, was it's probably just a coincidence. But let's look at all these other things. And I think, he was ignoring the real problems and putting all his energy into something
that coincidence
to give it purpose. Because I think a lot of times when we're upset with something, we like to put blame or reasoning behind something, and it's like something that we can grasp onto, so that we can not focus on the things that are bothering us. Yeah. And I think that was really what was going on with Albert, was he was just clinging on to something that would feel like it had purpose because he felt like he had no purpose. And I mean, he went through the ringer because even in the end, like everything that he had strived for was unsuccessful, and he still never got an answer to his question about, whether that coincidence was a coincidence or what the meaning was. But he felt a lot more relaxed because he knew that no matter what, everything was connected. And as you're watching the movie, there was coincidence. Mm-hmm. And all of everything was coincidence. The reason that he bumped into all of these people and the reason why Jude Law's character and Naomi Watts' character got involved in the first place was a coincidence. And it brought it full circle because by those characters getting to their existential crisis and then identifying their true selves, it resolved his true self. So literally the African guy, as he called him, he was like a Sudanese refugee. That he kept bumping into. He was like the catalyst of the story. And so as a viewer, it was no coincidence.
Right.
But in Albert's life, it was.
Right.
The point of the African guy in the movie is so that you have a connection to Albert's story. Because you see that it wasn't a coincidence, but Albert never sees that because it's just a little minor part of his story. Right. Whereas like that, but it's the butterfly effect.
Yeah.
That's literally all of that stuff that was going on, was all of these dominoes falling into place because this action happened, and then this action happened, and they went to go eat dinner at this family's house, and they weren't like on the same page, but who knows, maybe after that dinner they started to think about their lives differently, and it caused a chain reaction.
Right.
So there is no coincidences.
Well, and that goes back to a thought that I've had for a long time, and you'll probably remember this because we've had this discussion, M. Night Shyamalan's Signs.
Yes.
And it was the same thing. I had a friend when that movie first came out. He went to go see it. It's marketed as a sci-fi movie, or that was what he thought he was going to see. And he comes back and he's like talking about all the things that are wrong with it, like the aliens that are afraid of water, but they're walking around in the cornfields, which are usually pretty wet, and things like that. And it's like, but that movie wasn't about sci-fi. It was about coincidences and signs. And if you watch that movie, everything in there is a sign.
It happens for a reason.
It happens for a reason. Every single thing that happens for a reason. And that's kind of the way I look at life. Mm-hmm. We do have freedom of choice, but at the same time, there are certain things like Aber was talking about that are predestined along your life that are going to happen no matter what. But the path you get to that point sometimes changes. And so I don't know. It's kind of interesting. There are no coincidences.
Right. So, just to take this on like a different route or similar kind of philosophy, the Hermetic philosophies, like the principles.
Yes.
One of them is cause and effect.
Right.
So
I believe there is cause and effect.
For every cause, there is an effect, and for every effect, there is a cause. So
yes.
When this thing happens, it makes this happen, which makes that thing happen. So everything is a cause, and in a sense, everything is an effect also.
Right. And I do believe that. And, we talk, this was a fundamental difference that my husband and I have because, and a lot of people do this, like they believe that people don't take accountability if they want to blame someone for what happened. And I'm not talking about saying I'm an axe murdering thief because my parents beat me. I'm not talking about that. But I am saying that those things that happen to you change who you are. And so there is, you are predisposed to do certain things because of things that happened to you in your past. It goes back to that mirrors and triggers thing. It triggers you. What you do with it afterwards, that is the difference. You don't have to react in the same way, but the trigger is still there. Does that make sense?
Yes, and the cool thing is that, and then that maybe a lot of people don't realize, is that your effect, how it affects you, is the cause for something else.
Yes.
Whether you act in a positive way or a negative way,
it's going to
causes
affect someone else.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so everything is, we're conditioned to behave certain ways. We're conditioned to react certain ways. So there is always cause and effect. Nothing happens for a coincidence. Everything happens
and
for a
nothing
reason.
happens for no reason.
Right.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I'm absolutely not a nihilist.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Cool.
Well, any
Okay.
further thoughts, anyone?
No.
Or any thoughts? I would like to know what our listeners think. Have you watched the movie? What are your philosophic views? Do you believe in coincidences, or do you think everything is a sign? Is there everything is a cause and effect? Are you a nihilist? Are you a transcendentalist? Do you think everyone's innately good? Or, there's lots of different philosophical views. I'd like to know what yours are. Go over to the MMC chat, our chat group on Facebook, and we'd love to have you join in a conversation over there. Tell us what you think. And, I'm just interested what other people think. If anyone saw anything different than what we saw there, or if you had a different takeaway from that movie. I'd
Or
like to,
other movies.
or
Yeah,
other movies.
if you have
are
another
there
movie
other
that
movies?
you want us to watch and talk
Because
about,
especially
for
if it's philosophy based like that.
Yeah, I do like philosophies. So, philosophical discussions. I don't pretend that I am in the know and know everything. I like to debate those philosophies. I do like to debate those philosophies. So, what is up next week?
Next week, we are talking about women in music and female rockers.
Oh, awesome. That's one of my favorite topics. Yeah. Okay. Well, before we go, we'd like to thank Creative Audio Tech and Cake Mix Studios for our lovely, lovely theme music and our gear that we borrow from them. And we'd like to thank our listeners for coming back week after week. We have new podcasts every Wednesday. We hope you'll join us again. And don't forget to check out our blog at modernmusings.net. We have, hopefully we're back to blogging on a more regular basis now. We had a short hiatus for a while. Some family issues went on, but hopefully we'll get back into that. And always chatting on the MMC chat Facebook group. So that's it for this week, and we'll be back next week. We'll talk to you then.
Bye.
Bye.